Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. And today on Project S10, and again, we need the name for the truck. We're close. We got it narrowed down. Let me show you what we got for names so far. Oh yeah, I'm Offended, Wife Beater, Vanilla Ice, Snack Pack, Schmitty, Dirty Dove, Offender, Project Shitbox, X10 Smalls, and Sten. So we're close to getting into the name we want it to be. But now that we got that out of the way, today my buddy Steve's coming over again to help out on the S10, and we're going to be digging into the brakes. So a little bit of tips, few how-tos. There's a lot of you probably haven't even seen like the deal with the wheel bearings and packing and adjusting wheel bearings. So we'll get into that a little bit. If the filter comes in for the transmission, we'll be doing a transmission service as well as hopefully a new seal for the speedometer. And then depending on how long the video goes and the time we got no lights on the gauge cluster, so we got to figure that out. We got a new gas pedal to throw on. And I'll kind of update you on the wheels as to what the plan is for the wheels right now. The adapters won't be here till Monday, so I can't really say much about that until I prove they fit, and therefore I don't want to get into conditioning the wheel before they fit without giving too much away. But let's get into it. All right, guys, just real quick, I wanted to show you our buddies over at Rock Auto hooked us up with a set of Raybestos. So we bought this as a kit. It's a Raybestos rotor pads that come together as a set. With that being said, something to note as well, and I can't say this for all manufacturers, and no, we didn't go with a cross-drilled rotor because, well, it's not a performance truck. We'll just say that. It's gonna be a cool-looking everyday ride. But anyway, what I wanted to get to is they do come with races pre-installed in these things front and back. So if you're wondering that, and again, they may not all be this way, but a lot of them do come with the races installed. So if you're going to reuse your old wheel bearings or you're going to put new ones in, whatever you're going to do, you have races in here to start with, which is really nice. The only other thing we did get for the back side of this, again, races installed, is we got some new seals. So some new wheel seals from Timken on the back side of these. And it was a kit, so the Raybestos brake pads. I believe these are, yeah, semi-metallic. No, I think these are ceramic, to be honest with you. Hold on, let me look. These, I don't know, but I think they're ceramic. But anyway, we got our pads in there as well, and our oil over here on the floor. Dextron 3 or 4. Again, we're waiting on filter for that. But that's what we're dealing with for parts today, and we're going to start throwing them at this truck. And this truck is getting very close to being, let's get fun and let's do some fun stuff. The boring stuff is over, hopefully.
Morning, everyone. Steve from Flip and Customize here. So we're back on the project without a name right now, but the 93 Chevy S10, and you know, it's kind of important to stop, so we're gonna get into front brakes today. She had a little bit of a shimmy. I'm sure these rotors have never been changed because as most people probably are not familiar with the two-wheel drive stuff, we got to get into wheel bearings at the same time. So today we're gonna get a little in the weeds with this one because we're gonna adjust wheel bearings so we get some nice preload on those bearings. We're going to replace the wheel seals because we're putting the new rotors on, and we're going to get some new pads in there. And once we start getting into it, like always, oh, look at that. We got a funky brake hose we're going to have to replace too. So stay tuned, we're going to get into this one.
All right, here it is. We got our Steely kind of breaking away from the brakes a little bit. We had to throw it on there. It's the bolt pattern, it's off a little bit, but not much. Again, we're going to get adapters for this. But what we're trying to determine is, first of all, they actually fit on there and nothing rubs, nothing hits. Granted, we're going from a 14-inch to a 17, which I know, oh, it's only a 17. Well, that's 3 inches more than it had. And again, the suspension's fully sprung. Now think of this when it's sitting on the ground and then lowering it another 3 inches in low profile, it's going to be sweet. But what we're trying to determine now is like how much do we want to stick it out. And I'm actually surprised if you look down the profile of it. It is not bad at all, and I think the adapters that we need to get are like 1.25 inches. It's probably going to work out perfect, Steve.
I think so.
So if you, yeah, throw that level there and kind of roughly see. Now that the wheel's not, so that's like 2 inches. Yeah, they're going to be just about perfectly flush with the fender, which is honestly ideal. That would be pretty freaking rad. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and check the back too with one of these rims, but again, this is a better look at the rim. I'm thinking layers of grays and browns and maybe some white, and you already got the black, and then you start sanding and you're going at it and see what we come up with. But I think it's going to be pretty sweet with a nice weathered look. Going for Mopar rim on the Chevy.
All right, so here we are with the driver's side rotor off. For everyone that's not familiar with these, you go over to the truck, the rotor will be on, you pull the cap off, and then you see a cotter pin. Take the cotter pin out, then you're gonna have your outside nut. Back that off, and then the rotor comes off. Now here's the wheel bearing. So, interesting tidbit that we found is the outer had a bunch of new grease packed in it. So like, oh, maybe these things were into before. And then you come into the inner bearing that you have to actually pop the seal out to get to. And she's got some old grease in it, but you know, we'll clean it up, we'll look at it, and if we need to replace the bearings, we will. The outer bearing, I don't know if you guys could see that, but there's some pitting on it, and fortunately the previous owner gave us those, so we'll clean up the inner bearings, we'll give them a good inspection, and we'll be back to an installation. Alright, still at it here. We got the inner bearing cleaned up. She looked good, so we repacked her for grease. Put a new seal in, clean the back side of the rotor up. Back on the truck, we got the spindle all cleaned up. And you know, seal surface don't look bad, it looks pretty good. But we found out why there was some nice new grease on the outside. You want to see what's wrong with this picture? Yeah. Outer bearing here got a little hot because she, at some point, spun on the spindle. So we got new outer bearings that came with the truck. And we're gonna swap them out and keep going. All right, everyone, we're back again, and we got the wheel bearings packed. We got the seal on, we got the rotor on the truck, and now we're gonna set the bearing preload. So it's gonna be a little difficult to do one-handed here, and forgive me, I'm new at this whole videoing thing. Scott's a professional. What we're gonna do is get a wrench on here.
I can hold it.
And we're gonna tighten this nut up. Pretty much so it gets tight, right? So we're just trying to get everything seated. We're gonna back it off. And then you're gonna bring the nut in, take the wrench off, and then you're gonna feel. You're gonna feel a nice little drag, right? You don't want this thing to spin super loose. Get yourself a little bit of resistance. Turn a little bit more, a little bit of resistance, and that feels good right there. So what we're doing is, there are tapered roller bearings in there. And if you don't set the preload, then the bearing is not sitting tight up against the race. And when your camera goes blank, you think it's dead. So Scott, you can edit that out. So what you're doing is, you're trying to set the bearing against the race, because if you don't set preload, then it's sloppy in there. What ends up happening is the rollers bounce around and they get chipped, and then it's no good. Then you have premature failure. So we got a nice little drag on there. Now we're gonna just find the hole in the castle nut for the cotter pin, and we're gonna wrap this side up and move on to the next.
Steve's over here slaving. If you guys check this tool out, it's actually a caliper expander, so it'll push the caliper expander, piston, I don't know what you want to call it. Anyway, it'll push the piston back into caliper. It's just like a ratchet, so save yourself some time. You don't have to use channel locks or C-clamps. It's just another thing to do to speed up a process that not necessarily isn't that hard, but it's just a better way to do it. All right, guys, we wanted to show you little packing or greasing your tapered wheel bearing 101. And yes, we know they do make a tool for this, but this is how the old school guys would have done it. So, Steve, take it away.
All right, so you take your bearing and a handful of grease, and you just push it into the bearings. Don't try to go like this along perpendicular with the rollers, because you're not going to get it in between the outer race, the rollers, and the inner race. You just take it and you squeeze it through, and as you go along,
and you see that,
push
guys?
it through.
It's coming through the top of the bearing, so he's actually packing. That's what they call packing the bearing. He's pushing it through, so that's exactly what he wants to be doing. Perfect. And yes, he has gloves on because he is a modern mechanic. All right, guys.
All right, so here we are on the passenger side. All done. Just like the driver's side, we did the same thing. We serviced the bearings, cleaned them up, put all new grease in them, set the preload on the rotors. They're nice. New pads, clean the calipers up. This thing's a hot rod now. So before before we get too crazy and get into the transmission servicing, we're gonna go through, we're gonna check the tie rod ends. We already know we need sway bar bushing and bushings. Those look pretty bad. Sway bar bushings themselves don't look too bad. And we're just gonna go through the steering system, you know, because bigger wheels and tires, lower truck, you know, kind of want to steer, make sure we're going the right direction.
All right, guys, we're so heavily involved with the transmission service that we didn't really catch it on camera.
Sorry.
But nothing bad. It was just filter. Just took the pan off in a filter, and honestly, these pans suck to take off with this exhaust pipe here and the cross member here. We actually ended up unbolting the cross member and hanging that down so to get the pan out of there. However, what we are doing right now is if you look up in there, the speedometer sensor, did I use the right word for that? In the tail shaft of this transmission, there's an O-ring in there, and it was leaking pretty good. That was the only real leak on this truck, except for a small coolant leak. So we pulled that out of there. Steve's cleaning it up right now. And then we're just going to put a new O-ring on there. They don't make, I tried looking it up like through Rock Auto and stuff to see if we could get the exact O-ring. They didn't make it. Took the old O-ring kit out, and we have one here that will work. So we're gonna go ahead and get that cleaned in and put back in. Then we can fill our transmission up because the brakes are done. And double check our ball joints and on to the next thing.
Pretty decent new.
All right. So we get the speed sensor back in there with the new O-ring on there. So hopefully we've taken care of that leak because that was the only real leak on this transmission. So lower it down, throw some fluid in it, throw the tires back on it, check the ball joints, and next. All right, we got our Valvoline synthetic transmission fluid. This is Dextron 4. Now, before you all go hating me and be like, it takes Dextron 3. Correct. Now, look at the back. Recommended for use in Dextron 4, 3, 2. So this covers us. And honestly, no one had the 3 in stock. And second of all, Walmart came through in a pinch. And no, I'm not plugging Walmart by any means, but locally, that transmission fluid, anywhere as we looked, the only one we could find, and it was like 12 bucks a quart, and that's not even joking. And for whatever reason, Walmart was $6.50 a quart, shipped to my house. So it is what it is. You gotta do what you gotta do. It's a budget build, and it goes. All right, guys, so we got it down off the lift. Steve has just finished filling the transmission. I think we're gonna wrap it up here as far as this goes and try to finish up the regular maintenance stuff. You know, you want to get into some good stuff, and I get that. So I'm thinking the next video, the wheel spacers and or adapters are going to be here Monday. I'm going to test fit those and make sure they do fit. And once I confirm they do fit, we're going to get into the wheels. And honestly, there's a new direction on those, and I'm just going to say weathered white. Yes, that's right, weathered white. At least that's my initial thought. We're going to make sure they fit before I go ahead and paint those, but we'll do a video on that. Oops, I said it. I said paint. Anyway, we'll do a video on that. And I just want to say thanks again for watching. Thank you, Steve, for helping us out and kicking ass on this truck. You got to give us a subscribe and a like so you can follow this build because we're about to get into the cool, fun stuff. So thanks for watching. Tune in next time. This is Scott and Steve from Flip and Customize.